Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unnext News Radio podcast, your news source for all things unexplained. And now, here's your host for the Unnext News podcast, Margie K.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the program. I'm Margie K, and this is Unnext News. We are here every Friday at 5 o'clock, but mark your calendars because beginning in October or November, coming up, the shows are going to be at 6 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. So you want to keep that in mind, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel so you'll get notices in your email about upcoming shows. Today, or this evening rather, I have a really, really good show for you. You're not going to want to miss any of this. I met this lady a few years ago when I did an investigation for MUFON in Kansas City. It was during the 2011 UFO flap during the month of October, and this actually happened on October the 31st. And this was one of those big cases on that night. And she's going to talk about that and some other things. Debz Shakti is a quantum and consciousness group leader. She does hypnotherapy and quantum hypnotherapy as it pertains to ET experiencers and interdimensional contact. She's had her own lifelong daily contact and paranormal experiences. And we're going to talk about a new film that she was involved in this evening. Welcome to the program, Debz.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Margie. It's a great honor to be on the show, and it's great to be able to talk to you again after all these years.
Yes, indeed. In fact, you sent me an email the same day that I was going to contact you, talk about synchronicity, to check on how you have been doing and if things have been happening ever since we met regarding the investigation of your UFO sighting.
Yeah, have they.
Yes, indeed. I can see that you have been a very busy lady, but I'll tell you what, let's start with that event because that just sticks in my mind. And I know a lot of experiences have happened to people who were involved in that event on October 31st, 2011. So just as a background, there were a number of sightings on that day. In fact, the entire month. But on that day in particular, there were a number of sightings. And I believe the same craft was involved in at least 5 sightings at different locations. So what do you recall about that evening?
Oh, well, it's as clear as if it happened again or happened last night in my mind. It was one of the... Of having lifetime contact, it was one of the most compelling ones because it was, number one, it was Halloween, for good or for ill. You know, a lot of people poo-pooed it off because it was Halloween. They thought it was a prank. But I was out driving to a kind of fancy neighborhood in Lee's Summit, Missouri with my daughter-in-law and my 2 small grandsons. We were going to take them trick-or-treating, you know, like you do. And we got to a major intersection. It was a 4-way stop, and the light was red going our way, and we were facing, I believe, northeast. And suddenly, over the horizon of the treetops, behind all the trees on the main thoroughfare there facing us, there was this huge, and I mean huge, it was octagonal, I think, shaped visage of lights. And they were going around this octagonal shape in different colors, mostly bright white, but different colors. And all 4 of us at the same time said, "Oh my, what is that?" You know, the little ones were all excited. And my daughter-in-law, who's never been involved in any of this, said, "What is that, Mom?" And I said, "I believe that's a spacecraft, a UFO." And I had a really great camera at the time, like a pro camera. I was carrying it with me because it was Halloween, wanted to take good shots and videos. I got it out of my bag quickly, went to shoot this thing, it was fully charged. It was an almost brand new camera, and it completely shut down and wouldn't work. And I had at the time a little iPhone 5, and I got that out and got a little bit of video of it. And the light changed on, the other part of the intersection, and no one moved. It was like time stopped. All these cars were staring at it, and it just kept coming up, coming up, coming up. And then it looked like it was facing us as an octagonal shape, and then it went like this. And so we had been looking at the bottom of it, and it went like this. It was huge, and then it just started moving off towards the west. And we kind of forgot all about trick-or-treating at that point. The kids were excited. We followed it for a while across town, and then we kind of lost it after about a half hour. And we thought, oh well, we'll go trick-or-treating. That was amazing, exciting. And we got to that fancy neighborhood, and as we drove into it, it was like in a sci-fi movie. There were like 50 people, adults and children, standing in the middle of this big street in this beautiful neighborhood, all pointing up. And there that thing was again. And it was silent. It was huge. We all watched it. Some people were saying, no, it's aircraft and doing a flyby or something. But there was no sound, and it was just static. And then eventually out of the back of it, it shot out an orange kind of orb, and then a smaller one. And then it just took off like that. And the two orbs were there for quite some time. And then they eventually took off as well. All of this happened in the space of like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I got several videos and sent them immediately when I got home. I got onto the MUFON site and submitted all of that, and then you all took it from there. And I think we were even featured on a Coast to Coast show with you guys about it at the time afterwards. So it was pretty cool.
It was one of the bigger sighting reports from that evening. We did have a group of a flying team that did special events, and that happened to be a Chiefs game that evening. And there was a flying team that went over between a certain time period, but the time period that the object that you saw was after that. It wasn't that team had already landed at the Lee Summit Airport. So that did prompt a lot of reports because they have flashing strobe lights on them. So I just want to reiterate that absolutely was not the object that you saw.
Right. And as I remember, we actually captured some aircraft in the background of one of those videos with that craft. So.
Yes. So I think the strangest part about your sighting was that you said at one point when the craft was close that everybody was just kind of like in a trance-like state in the neighborhood. Is that what you recall?
Oh, I recall it very well, and I felt the same way. The most incredible thing was the children, all the little children were absolutely fearless. I mean, they had no fear about it. They were excited once they kind of came out of it. But when we first got there, it was like a sci-fi movie. Everyone was just standing there entranced, looking up. And when we got out of the car, we saw it too. And it was just this beautiful feeling almost of stillness and peace. There was no, there was some excitement inside, but we weren't doing anything. So it was very unusual.
Nobody was running, screaming or anything like that.
Not a one. No, not at all.
And I believe that you told me that your car was cold when you expected it to be warm. So maybe there was some missing time there.
We did have lost time. When I, went back through it, I mean, we were so excited. The adrenaline was up for hours. But, it was probably midnight, 1 o'clock when I was still up and kind of reviewing it in my mind and trying to write down everything. And I remembered it being freezing cold in the car. And, in our minds, we had only been out of the car for maybe 10, 15 minutes and we had the heater going. So it just didn't make sense. And I've experienced missing time many times, so I just kind of logged it in my head as, yeah, we had some missing time. And so who knows what all happened really during that time.
Yeah.
It's funny, I've never regressed for that one, nor have I regressed my daughter-in-law or my grandchildren. But now that we're talking about it, I think I probably should, just to see what happened.
I think that would be a good idea since you're in the
Yeah,
business.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yes. Then there's one other thing I found strange about that case. We spoke a few days later, and you were going to speak to some of the other people who were witnesses. And
Mhm.
didn't you tell me that some of them absolutely forgot about the whole thing?
They absolutely did not remember any of it, none of it. And some of them were, I was close to some of these people, and they looked at me like I was kind of crazy. So I believe there was, sometimes we have screen imagery that happens with people to kind of soften the memory, or oftentimes they'll have complete amnesia of the whole thing, and their brains kind of fill in what happened during that time period. In this case, they're like, no, it was just a regular Halloween night, and we did our regular thing. So
Do your grandkids remember it?
they do remember it. And in fact, I had shared your book on the UFO flaps, the Kansas City UFO flaps, with them, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, that was, yeah, it was. We remember it." But the youngest I think was maybe 3 at the time, and the oldest was 6 or 7. So they were very little, but they remember it very clearly.
Let me just see if I have a no, I don't have the picture of what I wanted, but so let's go back to your hypnotherapy. How long have you been involved in that?
Well, I've been a hypnotherapist for, I've been qualified to do hypnotherapy for 4 decades, for 40 years. And I did it off and on, almost kind of like a little hobby, or, you know, at first, just because about the time that I got certified and was really into it, then I, started having babies and getting involved in that kind of thing. So I would do it with friends or a few clients, but, really professionally, it's been over 3 decades, 30, 35 years of a lot of work. And that's across the board for whatever people needed it for. But I became very good at regressing people, but not just into, their childhood or former things in their life. And then not even in a past lives, what you call past lives, but we get into the quantum realm where it's any iteration, any layer of life. As you know, there are infinite worlds, infinite universes, and infinite versions of ourselves, and we can access any of that with quantum hypnosis. It's a really good technique, and it's very healing, because I think as a person is able to basically channel a version of themselves, and they hear themselves later in the recording giving forth all of this information that they had really no idea was inside of them, that relates to whatever it is they want to address or explore. It's very healing, as well as really enlightening work. So it's my great pleasure. It's my great joy to do this work. It's fantastic. It's like living in a sci-fi movie every day.
There's nothing more interesting than that.
No,
Never a dull moment, right?
absolutely not. And I think, just when I think I've heard it all, Margie, I get blown away by another story, by another experience that, it blows the mind how unlimited the universe really is, how unlimited the consciousness that we all are is.
How many people do you estimate that you have done this work for, done hypnosis for, that have had contact with extraterrestrials or interdimensionals?
Oh, I would say several hundred just on that topic. I've worked with several thousand people over the career, but what's odd is that I would get one every once in a while, that went into that kind of exploration. Or maybe they even came to me because they had an experience and they didn't understand it, or they felt like there was more. But now it seems like there's been a funnel of these experiencers starting to come to me. And so I would say probably about 80% of my work now is with experiencers. And I don't even want to call them abductees or even, you know, ET or UFO experiencers. I just call them experiencers because they could think they've seen a ghost. They could think they were interacting with angels or fairies or Sasquatch or whatever. But what I'm coming to find is that it's all the same thing. It's all different versions of us. You know, we are all the same consciousness expressing in unlimited versions in different frequency, basically. And we're all entangled, so we can interact with each other and give each other information as much as we like. And I believe as we as a species in this timeline begin to become more awakened and our vibrational frequency changes with that, as we learn more about ourselves, then we're able to access more and more of that because we're more resonant with those higher levels of frequency. I know it's mind-blowing, but I'm way into quantum physics, so if you feel like your listeners need for me to re-explain some of that, please do. I'm pretty sure the people listening to this already know about it.
I'm sure a lot of them do, and I have to say that I'm in 100% agreement with you on that. Do you believe that there is an awakening happening where there is are a lot more people who are becoming aware and aware of vibration and consciousness?
I absolutely do, Margie. And I mean, just listen to the general vernacular that you hear every day, or see every day on social media, even in the news, even in advertisements. Now we're hearing the word vibe. We're hearing the word, you know, awakened. We hear people say they're getting woke. We hear people saying that they feel like they're in a shift. You hear people talking about consciousness. So these things, I think it's exponential. It's like the 100th monkey, you know. There were a few of us over the years starting to kind of explore these things. And especially in my age group, you know, the old hippie years, we were kind of exploring altered states of consciousness and Eastern philosophy and things like that. Well, enough of us explored that and started talking about it and practicing it, and it started getting into the general public. I think things like, well, I've been a yoga teacher most of my life too. You didn't talk about such things in United States in a yoga class. It was more like stretching and maybe breathing. You didn't talk about the rest of what yoga is, which is tapping into deeper consciousness, meditation, you know, tapping into the higher mind. But now everywhere you go, that's what it's like. And I think that movement even helped a lot. I see it everywhere. Where you don't see it promoted very much is in the general media because, you know, it's hard to control people when they're awakened and they know they are, you know, and they know they're more than they are. So, but you talk to the grassroots people, your friends every day, chances are someone in that group, or maybe all of them, know something about this, or at least suspicion that it's going on. And they recognize that there's a lot of good happening in the world. It's just not being promoted because it's not sensational on media. It doesn't sell things. So
Exactly, I agree. Now, you not only do quantum hypnosis, you do energy and vibrational healing, channeling, you're a psychic, you do intuitive consultations, as well as fitness and yoga and self-discovery work. How did you get interested in these subjects? Did it all come at once, or was it something that progressed over the years?
you know, it's funny. People are always asking me, "How did you do so much in this life? You know, you've got so many fragments of things." And but yet they're very expanded. I'm expanded in all of these topics. And I just tell them, well, number one, I'm old, so I've had a lot of time to pack it all in. And I'm a highly distractible gal. So I'm interested in many things. What I found is that whatever I get really interested in, really passionate about, and I believe this goes across the board for people, when you're passionate about something, when you're really excited about it, it usually, your inner self, the universe, whatever you want to call it, dovetails that with the other things that you're already passionate about and good at. And it kind of forms into this amalgam of beautiful practices or belief systems or, thought puzzles that actually help you move through life. So most of the things you just described, I came in knowing how to do. Now, did I go through and get a lot of education to teach yoga, for instance, or martial arts or whatever? Absolutely. But I came in seeing and interacting with multidimensional beings, with energy, with the ability to help people feel better if they weren't well, or animals, even as a little child. And so that just kind of morphed into being utilized with the other things that I became interested in and educated in. And I just don't even know what to call myself anymore, other than just a facilitator of awakening, maybe,
There you go. That's a good name. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do any of your family members have the same abilities, like your parents or grandparents?
I'm pretty sure they did. I come from both sides of my family were very strict religious people. They were Catholic. I'll just go ahead and say that. So at the time, when I was born in the 50s, that kind of thing wasn't talked about a whole lot. It was more you talked about your religion. But I do know that some of my relatives, now that I'm, once I became an adult and it was less taboo to talk about those kind of things, several of my relatives had mentioned that they had been able to perhaps, they had visitations from their dead grandparents or their spouse or whatever. Several of my relatives have always been interested in, growing their own food and growing herbs for medicine and things like that. What I see more than anything, what I've recognized more than anything, are the children and the grandchildren in my life. They've just come in with that stuff. And some of them are deeply interested in it and talk about it all the time. And some of them, it's just not that interesting, even though they have the abilities. But yeah, I mean, even my own children, when they were little, were talking about the little visitors that came to play with them at night, and they drew pictures of them when I didn't talk about that with them. And my grandchildren definitely. In fact, when we had that Halloween sighting, we were in the car and seeing that craft. The littlest one, my grandson Gavin, said in his little wee voice, he's like, "Oh yeah, those are those playmates that come at night and in our ceiling. They're above our ceiling."
Oh,
The same thing. He recognized it. It was just like a matter of fact. He's like, "Oh yeah, they come and play with us at night."
oh my
So
goodness. I don't remember that. I don't think that's in the report.
I don't think it is either, but
Uh,
I totally remember him seeing it, and I was just like, "What?" And his mother said,
wow.
"What?" And at the same time as we're driving, racing around trying to follow this thing. But yeah, so but now that they're growing up, they're all becoming young teenagers and or preteens. They have many other interests. They don't talk about it as much. I have one grandson who, up until I don't know, about a year and a half ago, said he was going to be a spaceman, not an astronaut, a spaceman, and he was going to learn about aeronautics and astronomy and all of that. And it was a huge interest of his. Now he wants to be a Major League Baseball player, but he's still really interested in the stars. So who knows where these kids are going to go with it?
Who indeed? My own daughter, my oldest daughter, for years, it had nothing to do with anything. She's extremely left-brained and analytical. In fact, she is the finance manager for my company
Oh,
because
cool.
she thinks like that. But one day, a few years ago, she and her son saw a UFO while they were driving, and that completely turned her around. And now she's interested in it. She wants to know everything about my investigations. So,
Yeah,
it's a matter of when you have the experience yourself, it changes your perception of
I
reality, doesn't it?
agree. I mean, I just watched, my goodness, I just watched, William Shatner's uh,
Yeah.
return from his little trip to space, and he was so profoundly changed. And my first thought was, he's speaking the same words that my favorite astronaut Edgar Mitchell spoke when he had his experience that was so
Mhm.
life altering. He gave up being an astronaut and started the Association for Noetic Sciences, and
Yeah.
that was his new life path. And I was watching William Shatner, who, is a celebrity and people kind of joke about him and everything, but the man was profoundly changed for the rest of his life. No matter how long he lives from now on, he is changed by that experience because
Mhm.
something happened to him up there. He saw life as it really is. And I believe that that's what these experiences, no matter whether you're interacting with other beings or you're seeing a an incredible thing in the sky or landing on the ground, or you see a smoky shape in your room shifting around. When you have that experience and you consciously remember it and you really are in the feeling state of what's happening, it alters you for life. And I think it turns on some latent switches in your DNA of who we really are, to remember. And I believe the main message is we're all one, we're unlimited. We came here as a little collective science experiment with each other to have some learning, and now we're kind of tired of it and we're ready to move on and explore grander things. But we can't do it unless we all work together. That seems to be the overarching message that comes out in all of my sessions too, as well. We always get messages for the client, but at the end, we always get a major message for the collective, for the for the planet.
Mhm.
So,
With regards to your channeling work, who are the star teachers?
wow, the star teachers, that's so incredibly interesting. They physically came into an energy healing session of mine many years ago. I had a person who came to me who absolutely didn't believe in anything, not even energy healing, but she was a terminal cancer patient. It was her kind of her last straw. One of her relatives bought a session for her, and she's just like, whatever, I'll go because I don't have anything to lose. And she was on my massage table. I don't do massage, but I was doing energy work. And I just asked the universe for help. I just asked my guides, whoever you are, please come and help. And literally the ceiling of my office opened up. There was a huge craft above the office. And suddenly there were these 7 to 8 feet tall, beautiful, translucent humanoid beings, but they were made out of like a translucent kind of plasma material, faceless, but a human shape, elongated. And all you could see were streams of colored lights moving through them. And they literally just, telepathically, I say telepathically ask if they could help. And I said, please do. And some of them were working on her in different areas of her energy field. One literally came, stepped behind me, and inserted itself into my body. And I watched my hands move. I felt my eyes move, and there were all kinds of things happening there. I was given some new modalities basically in that way. And after the session was over, uh, they disappeared. The ceiling closed up. Everything looked the same. And when I helped her to sit up and gave her a drink of water, like I always do at the end, to debrief, I asked how she was feeling. And she said, perfect. I'm perfect. And I said, "Oh, you feel better?" And she said, "No, I feel perfect." And she said, "I had the most extraordinary experience. Let me tell you what happened." And she literally described the same thing that I experienced, and I knew it was real.
Oh,
And suffice to say, she was perfect. At her very next visit, which was the next week with the oncologist, there was no cancer. And she went on to be healthy, happy, and whole. And I've kind of lost touch with her after these years, but I'm glad because she was healed. Whatever happened
wow.
happened because they were there. Well, after that, I just said thank you. I don't know who you are, but thank you. And I'm a big meditator. I have a very deep practice, and a couple days after that, I just said, let me please have contact with who came in. And what came back was, we've always been with you. We're your best friends. We've always been with you since you came in here, and you're part of us. And uh,
Mhm.
it was just the first time I got to see them physically and feel them physically, and someone else saw them. So, and in that meeting, they said, and what we'd like for you to do now is to hold a general uh, experience for people, because I did a lot of workshops back in the day locally here in Kansas City. And they said, do it on this date at this time and invite as many people as you can, and we'll have an interactive experience with them and answer any questions. And there'll be a general healing for each person. They'll get a customized healing. And it just happened to be, I think it was in February, which, here in Kansas City, not a good month to have any kind of
No.
you know, and I couldn't get a hall. And I said, oh, this is impossible. And they said, have it in your house. Well, I have a pretty small house. And I don't know how, but we fit like 52 people in my living room and dining room that night. And it was a blizzard outside, and they still came. And the star teachers came, and they were answering all these questions. And someone in the gallery said, well, who are you? Who are we talking to? How do we address you? And they said, well, we're you having evolved to a different layer of frequency. And we've evolved past that dualistic, egocentric level where you are. So we don't ever use labels anymore. We work as one. We have individual gifts, but we work together in harmony. So we don't have a label. And she said, well, I need to know what to call you if I want to talk to you. And they said, well, you can call us the star teachers if you like, or even the teachers, whatever resonates. And so thus the name was born, but they had no label when we were first interacting. But
Mm.
really, that's their message, is that they come with a message of encouragement. They always say in their messages and their channelings that they are us having achieved what we're looking for here, and they're here to give us encouragement to keep going, because they say what we do right now is what makes that happen. And what happens is we have some sort of event where we all come together, or most of us do. We realize that we've been kind of kicking ourselves in the heinies, holding ourselves back by divisiveness and with boundaries. And as we all work together, we figure out a way to live happily here and harmoniously. And then then we're kind of not locked into staying on the earth. We go into space exploration on a big scale. And a lot of us leave the earth. We don't even stay in this dimension. We go off into interdimensional things, and we become not just earthbound. And so some people would call them extraterrestrial, but they call us their future ancestors. We are them on a different layer is all. And what they say is, as we keep raising our vibration, as we keep learning things and opening ourselves up to remembering who we are, we will sustain our focus on that higher level of being, and then we will no longer be bound to this particular place. So it's a big message.
Oh, most certainly it is. You were talking about a healing session earlier with one of your clients. Have you ever asked for healing for yourself? And if so, have they complied with that request?
Yes. Yes, many, many times. In fact, always there is help. Um, and in fact, I just came through a very serious kidney illness in the last few weeks. And as always, I was like, I'm getting tired. I don't, can you give us a little hand here? And the message that I got back was, because they're really direct, was we don't do everything for you. You chose this path. You chose to come in with, in my case, a birth defect, deformed kidneys that don't work very well. And you're still learning on that path. We can help you learn how to ease that pain. But until you're convinced you're finished with the learning that you came in to learn from that, uh, you know, you still have to move along that path. So I thought that was kind of unusual. But yes, I have had probably 3 or 4 times in my life where I've been told, you'll never be able to, well, at one point I was paralyzed, you'll never be able to be athletic again. And I was always an athlete, but you may not even be able to turn your head after this one accident I had. And within a year, I was not only completely healed, but I had won a national martial arts championship, and I was
Wow.
a champion bodybuilder and all of that within that same year. And yet I was paralyzed a year before and went through some extreme spinal surgery and all that. I've had 2 NDEs, Margie, and for those of you who are listening don't know what that means, near-death experiences, where you literally do code out and you leave your body, you go, like you're absolutely going to go and not come back. And I came back both times, and I think both of those times really kind of turbocharged the gifts I already had and
Mhm.
really galvanized in my mind, we do not die. No one dies. We change form. Uh, it's like, and it's painless. It's like walking from the door to my office to the hallway. And you have a different experience,
Mhm.
but it's a beautiful thing. And that's something that happens in my sessions every time. We visit at least one experience where you leave your terrestrial body and go into that space, or you go to wherever you go afterwards. And it's always a beautiful, enlightening thing. So I think that's a
Mhm.
big part of this work too, is to help people understand there's nothing to fear. And if you would, because you really don't die. And if there's nothing to fear, then what's all the arguments about? What is all this scrabbling to get more than the other guy or survival and all that? We don't need to do that. What we need to do is have an agreement with each other that we can live and work together in peace. Yeah.
Mhm. And that's a good message. I've been in touch with more and more people who have had near-death experiences, and of course, that's not a coincidence that they're all
No.
talking to me at the same time. But one of the things I've noticed being involved in ufology quite heavily is that people who have had near-death experiences are more likely to have experiences with extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings and have psychic abilities, and they're all of those things are just enhanced exponentially. Is that what you're finding with the people that you have been in touch with?
I absolutely do find that. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that that experience really does help to turn on some of those switches. I believe that, we hear a lot about, in physiology, we hear a lot about having all this junk DNA that people don't know what it's for. Well, it's not junk DNA. It's the greater part of who we are, and it's just it's like light switches that were turned off for us to come in here and have an experience. It's kind of a slow moving, time rigid, you know, physical experience. We couldn't have a valid experience like that as a human being on Earth in third dimension uh, if we knew we had all these superpowers. So they kind of got switched off. And now that we've had the experiences we came to have, they're starting to get switched back on. And so I don't know, it's a chicken or egg thing. I don't know if people have near death experiences so that they'll remember those kind of things and have those things come back online, or if we have, learned enough, or we're starting to learn enough where we allow ourselves to have a near-death experience. The bigger part of us says, okay, it's time to have this little, awakening, and then they come online. But it's happening more and more. A lot of people I talk to say, oh yeah, I've had one too. Whereas 20 years ago, it was the stuff of the imagination in books. You might hear about one or two people.
Yes, it is pretty mainstream now
Mm-hmm.
compared to 20 years ago, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
You have a big project, movie. Let's talk
Right.
about that. How did that come about?
Wow, that again, synchronicities, but there are no accidents, right? There are no coincidences. I was, I was introduced to a fellow who I knew he was a film producer, but that wasn't why we were meeting, and by a friend who was in the contact community. And we were meeting about another subject, and I kept getting all of this information psychically from him during the meeting. And so I sat on it for a day, but it really ate at me. I felt there was something going on with him. And so I contacted him privately, and I said, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I was getting information from you, on an intuition level, that we need to have a session, and I would love to gift you a session if you would like. If there's something going on that you would like to explore, please let me know. And then I kind of gave him a little bit of explanation about how that worked. And immediately he came back and said, I'm terrified to do it, but here's what happened. And he had an experience that was absolutely, well, terrifying when he was a 7-year-old boy. And now he's, in his 50s, and his whole life was molded by that terrifying experience and it's complex, but, he was a little boy. He had this experience where he was told by his parents, his father especially, don't talk to people about this. We don't want anybody to hear about this. It's just, it's, you were imagining things and things like that. But he was terrified, I think, by the reaction of his father, not so much by the situation itself, that he lived his whole life being afraid of something happening again that he couldn't talk about. And so he lied about a lot of his life, all through his life, and gained all these survival mechanisms. He didn't like being under an open sky. He didn't like being in the dark. He didn't like being near big water. And he didn't want to live that way anymore. He's a very good, honest man. And so I said, okay, well, here's the work I do, and let's make an appointment. Well, it took 2.5, 3 years to get him to visit the thing that was really bothering him. He had to go in little snippets, and look at things like from his childhood, happy things. And then eventually he went into a couple of past lives, which were amazingly beautiful. And I think he gained trust. But he kept saying, I'm not ready to do what he called the big one. I'm not ready to do the big one yet. I'll let you know. And one day, about a year ago, it was September or October, he called me and he said, Debz, I think I'm ready to do the big one. And I said, awesome, let's set it up. And he said, no, you don't understand. I want to do the big one. And I feel so much trust with you now after what we've done that I'd like to do it real time on film so that the world can understand. Because I feel like, we've been having conversations, and I kept saying, look, you're telling me things about what your experience was that I've had hundreds of people tell me. Not that you're not unique, or not that it's not a special experience, but hundreds of people have come to me with almost the same type of thing, different variables, but the same thing. And he said, if there are that many people coming to you, there have to be thousands, maybe millions of people who are having these experiences who feel the same way I do, that they have to keep it hidden, that they have to keep silent, and it's ruining their lives. And I want people to see what happens. So that's how the movie started. We agreed to film his big session, visiting this experience, and that's how the film was born. The name of the film has a very provocative name called Alien Abduction Answers. And I despise the term alien because they're not.
Right.
To me, they're family, they're us. I don't like the word abductions because in all of my experiences and all of the experiences of the people I work with, we find that you're not abducted, there's an agreement, of some sort. And sometimes the brain inserts other information that people then come back and feel like something strange or awful, even terrifying has happened, until they go in with this work and then they see it clearly and it's something completely different. But they called the movie that because we'd be preaching to the choir if we called it My Wonderful Experience with the ETs, or something like that. So we're trying to, hopefully with that title, gain people's trust who have grown up with the Hollywood version of what it's like to interact with other beings of consciousness, no matter who they are. The film grew from just his story to including a lot of my clients who were brave enough, bless them all, to come onto the set in different places and talk about their experiences and how they were transformed by the work once they saw everything clearly, and how they're now advocates for moving forward as a species to become who we're supposed to become. And then really, really fun, the film grew from just that to bringing in someone who I always admired, who helped me kind of be who I am out in the open, and that was Whitley Strieber. I'd had all these experiences in my life, but I never really talked openly to people about them, other than just a few, until that book he wrote, Communion, came out, and it changed my life. I'm like,
yes,
this is the same thing. Literally, that was such a weird thing. I was in a bookstore looking in the parenting section, I think for a potty training book or something, and this book fell off the top shelf and hit me on the foot, face up, and it was that face. And if any of you have seen the original cover of Communion, you see it is the iconic face of the ET. And I looked at that face and I thought, oh my gosh, I've seen this all my life. Who else has seen this? And I bought the book, forgot about the potty training book. And that book kind of changed my life as far as being out of the closet about it myself. So I always wanted to meet him and thank him. And because the way the universe or the higher self works,
has its way.
He agreed to be in our movie, and we flew out to California, to a very beautiful place that also has a lot of meaning. We don't have time to talk about it, but he is a big part of this film, and he gives the film a real sense of credibility. He's a brilliant person anyway, but he's kind of the elder spokesperson for the ET encounter experience. So we're very grateful to have him, and now we're friends. He wasn't just somebody I said, oh, thank you for changing my life, like a starry-eyed fangirl. We're friends. We text each other and talk to each other a lot, and I'm so grateful. So see how the world works. It's so amazing.
Yes, it works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's a time frame, a time schedule that might not be your schedule, but it's the right time for things to happen.
Goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Boy,
so when
that's
is this
a huge statement?
When is the film going to come out?
We are hoping to premiere it early November. We're still in negotiation with distributors. Um, and it, as far as I know, it's already been picked up, but we're trying to get them to put us at the top of the food chain for distributorship. You can get on with a distributor, but you could go to the DVD bin in Walmart right away, or you can be number one on Netflix or Amazon. So that's kind of
Right.
what we're doing right now. We had a lot of post-production stuff to do, and now that's all finished, and we're just waiting for the next step. And so as soon as I hear about the premiere, you'll hear about it. Absolutely, Margie.
Well, do let me know, and I will post it everywhere.
We're
We
very
can do
excited because
network
it's,
stuff.
again, that title is provocative, but the message of the film is so beautiful, and it's a very moving film. I mean, these are real people. They're people that you see every day at your workplace, you know, at the park, at parties, and you'll recognize. I think people will recognize themselves in this film.
When you do hypnotherapy work with a client, do they most of the time do they recall things in the first session with you, or does it sometimes take multiple sessions for somebody to go deep enough in the hypnosis that they can recall things?
I can't think of a time when they didn't go deep enough the first session to recall
Hmm.
things. I mean, this method is, I don't know, it's become refined over the decades, but you know, you have to get past the fear of the thing first. Some people say
Mhm.
they want to know, but then they're not sure they really want to know. So, like with John, our director, our the filmmaker, he wasn't sure he could go there in that first session, but he went very deep and he visited many, many parts of his life that he had forgotten about or wasn't even aware of that were comforting and delightful. And then the next time he went to some past lives that were amazing and incredible and absolutely verifiable. And so these things sometimes they take several sessions, but he was an anomaly for most of my clients. Most of my clients come and within a couple to 3 hours, they go through where they need to go. And some never need another session, and some just want to come back and ask for more. One thing I will say in my sessions, Margie, is I teach the people how to do this themselves. I give them the tools if they want it so that they can be self exploring them, without me. That's part of my job, I think, is to make people self empowered. But some people just like having somebody there to guide them, and I'm happy to do that too.
Sounds like you've been doing really, really good work, and I like your energy. And I'm glad we
Thank you.
reconnected because I
Well,
think we
I
have
love
some
your
work to
energy.
do together.
I do too, and I'm super
So,
excited about it. I'm just sorry we waited so long to reconnect, but I can't wait to start getting together with you, in the monthly MUFON meetings here in our town. It's just been really hard to schedule that, but I'll make it a priority from now on. It sounds like your group is really, really amazing, and
we have a
I would
pretty
love to get to
amazing
know you.
group of people in the state of Missouri, but also in Kansas City MUFON. We just started
Yeah.
our meetings back after a 2-year hiatus because of COVID, and we had a lot of people show up, and they
Mhm.
want answers to all of these questions, not just
Exactly.
ETs, but everything, and it's all connected, isn't it?
It really is. I can give you just a little hint. I can't say much about it, but there will be another movie, and that movie is a sequel to this one, and it's going to be exploring the um, the idea, or I think it's the truth, that consciousness is all connected, and that all these modalities that we're looking at, remote viewing, as you know, you do, I do, out of body experiences, astral travel, hypnotherapy, psychic ability, shamanism, even, religious rituals, Native American or indigenous people's rituals. These are all methods of making contact with those other parts of reality that are ourselves. And so that's what that second movie is going to be about. And there are going to be some big heavy hitters in that movie. You're going to love it. So
Oh, that sounds
just a
wonderful.
little teaser.
Cannot wait to see that.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned, I just have to ask you this one last question, that you have had experiences with the paranormal your entire life. So what does that encompass when you say paranormal?
Oh, my dear, you name it, and it's been there. I mean, I haven't been asked to do a lot of it lately, but I used to do, clearings of homes and offices of what were perceived as negative entities. What we found in my work is that they're, you know, beings trying to figure things out in their frequency that are parallel to something happening to the person asking for the service in this reality. And when we realize what that connection is, the negative experiences or the scary experiences that were happening end. But it's a mutual thing. There are parallel things. There is always a connection. So I have been up against some pretty, what people would call scary things, what people would call exorcism type things, and they always turn out to be, they have a happy ending because you go about it a different way, where you're actually trying to help that other being understand what's bothering them. I've had what people would call ghosts, spirits, fairies, angels, of course, every kind of extraterrestrial you could imagine. Orbs, always. The orb beings are always around. Spacecraft, all kinds of spacecraft. Voices, you name it.
Do you have anything happening? I imagine you have a lot happening in your own house.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at any given time. In fact, I remember one time not long ago, my husband came in. I had just had done an online. I do a lot of global workshops and experiences, over Zoom or YouTube Live or whatever. Had just done one, and my dogs had snuck into the office, and my husband came in after it was over. So I was in that real high vibrational state anyway, and he was taking a little video of the dogs just, being in my room afterwards and being silly, and there were just millions of orbs in the room in the video. You can barely see anything else, it just orbs. So that energy was there, and that's why the dogs always want to come in, because animals feel that they want to be in that energy. But yeah, at times when I used to see people in person in my office, we'd blow light bulbs, we'd set off car alarms, computer would go on the fritz, a lot of electrical activity. I've learned to shield that ahead of time before we get online, because it happens so often. But yeah, in the home, I believe our home has some really great energy, and it's a sanctuary. In quantum physics, we call that conditioned space, and I'm sure you're familiar with that term, where you could walk into a 2,000-year-old temple, not even believing the religious beliefs of the people who built that temple, but you literally feel different when you walk in there than when you were in your other life. Well, that's because that's a conditioned space. That space has been imprinted with all of that faith, all that energy, that beautiful vibration over the centuries, and literally has become a vortex. It attracts more of that energy and it transmits it. So I believe that's what our home and my office is like right now.
Yeah.
And I believe we can make a conditioned space of ourselves. So that's why I teach, meditate every day, do your spiritual practice every day, whatever that is, that gets you in that flow state, that beautiful state of connection, and try to do it at the same time every day, and maybe in the same place, but definitely do it for yourself, and you condition that space in your heart. And so you're a walking temple.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time this evening, but thank you so much for reconnecting with me at just the right time. And just to let everybody know, what is your website?
Oh, my website's really easy. It's debzshakti.com, DEBZSHAKTI.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Debz. And I hope you'll come back again soon.
I will, and we will stay very connected from now on. Thank you, my sister. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is Margie K saying good night for now. We'll see you again here next week.
You've been listening to the UNX News Podcast with Margie K. Any rebroadcast or duplication of this program or its content without express written permission from UNX Media or Margie K herself is strictly prohibited. The UNX News Podcast, in direct cooperation with the internet website unxmedia.com.